So the goal of this project is to build a UV sanitizing cabinet. We own a store. It's a bead store. We sell beads and jewelry making supplies and rocks and stones and crystals and tools. A lot of what we do is teach, or at least my wife does. She's the teacher, at least when we're not in the middle of a pandemic. But we have a fair-sized workshop, and it has a lot of tools. We have 8 stations. Each one has their own set of tools, plus tools they share, plus extra tools on the wall, different hammers and things that the students might share. Of course, we can't do that now, but all these tools get used one way or another. After they're all done, we need to sanitize them, and a lot of these tools are small. Files and pliers and cutters and things are very small, and it's very time consuming to try and clean them and sanitize them every time we have a class. While we were open in the fall, we could only have 4 students. 4 students at the end of the day might be 100, 150 different pieces, tools that we have to sanitize. Some of the stuff you can't even sanitize with anything liquid are rocks and pumice, almost looks like cat litter. That stuff still realistically needs to be sanitized. So we had to come up with a way to sanitize stuff. We did a bunch of research. From what we found online, small little cabinets, size they're really just a toaster oven or a microwave with no heating element and just a UV light in them. And of course, they're like 4 times the price of a microwave as well. So we threw around the idea of just taking an old microwave and throwing a UV light in it, which is totally doable. If you don't have a lot of stuff to do, just small amounts, that's great. Go ahead, use one of those. Some people used a cooler or just a plastic tote bin. I was quite willing to order one of these UV cabinets, but they were going to take a couple of months before we actually even got it. But we could build one for a lot less money. As we went through the research, picked different things to try. Those drawers weren't going to work. I had this old sandblasting cabinet that I've never used. This is what we came up with in the end after trying different things. We want this because we can put 2 layers. They're 30 inches deep. Each drawer is, 15 inches in height. So with that cheap rack that I had, we can actually have 2 layers of tools stacked in there and sanitizing all of it all at the same time. I emptied everything out of these cabinets, cleaned them all out really good, vacuumed them, and then tried to figure out what we're going to use. So this is just a baker's rack from the dollar store. I'm sure these things were not even $1 a piece. We just have to adjust them a little bit. We needed to put a little bit of a bend in it because they were a little bit too wide for the drawers. This doesn't take any real skill. Found something to bend it on and hold it in place. And took 2 or 3 tries, but we got it bent, and it's going to sit inside the cabinet fairly snug because I didn't want them to fall out. But that just puts a little bit of an end or bend in the end of. Well, going to have to edit that out. This is how nicely it fit into the cabinet with a bend. Then I used these shower hooks that, again, from the dollar store, so 12 were probably $1. The bend was a little wide. I wanted it to fit really nice and tight in the drawer. This is just me showing you how it sat. As we tested it for where everything's going to sit, we found that I had left this original bend, and what it was doing is catching on the rail. So we really needed to knock off a good ½ inch or so. You can see the other ones there. As you know, these are all just test units. So you can see I just took the bend that was in it and made it a little tighter, but it wasn't quite right. I bent them much tighter. I made sure that they were nice and short so that they just get over the side of the cabinet. And you got to push them down. They stay really nice. They don't move. They don't hit the rails. And they were perfect. And what's going to happen is the other side, or the other end, has a hook on it as well. We left that, and then these just sit here. So as we're taking the cabinet apart and my big fat head gets out of the way, you'll see these little plastic tabs. I don't know if every set of rails has these, but most sliding rails that I've ever worked with have these. On this one goes up, one goes down, It unlocks, and then you can slide them out. The cabinet's now on its back, and I'm pointing to the top there. That's where we need to have one of the lights mounted. I also want it to be reflective surface there. This is the UV light that we found. I found it on Amazon. It was a great price. I'll put a link in the description below. I think in Canada here they were about $20, $25. They were very expensive when I checked locally. I went to a pet store. They were literally $150 a piece. When I can get them on Amazon for $20, $25. The next thing we need, of course, is reflective material. And what I chose, mainly because I had them. So for me, they were free. These are just dollar store windshield sunshades. Do not cut them with an X-Acto knife. Aluminum is sticky, and when you try and cut it, it just drags and it'll tear it. Don't use short scissors. I used what I had handy. I should have thought it out a little more. Use a longer pair of scissors, a full-size blade, because short ones are a real pain in the butt. I need this drawer I'm using for just sizing. I'm just going to sketch out around it with a marker just so I can cut it to size, because this one's going to go on the bottom, on the underside of this drawer for the bottom drawer as well, but I also need another one to go on the underside of the top cabinet where that light is going to be mounted. So it needs to be a pretty good fit there. Yeah, this is, again, a shot of me with the short scissors. Kind of dumb. Don't do that if you can. It's not really going to make a difference. It's just less of a pain in the butt if you have some decent scissors. And we'll just try a test fit just to see. This is where it's going to go, on the bottom of that top drawer. Going to have to just trim the edges. I know I put it inside, but it didn't really work. I decided just take the whole thing, stick it in there, and fold it until I got it where I wanted. It's not imperative that every single corner and nook and cranny get covered. As long as this thing is pretty much covered with reflective material, it's going to be just fine. I just cut a section, folded it over. This just seemed to be easier to do. If I was going to do this again, I would use spray adhesive. I thought I had brought it with me. Of course I didn't. Story of my life. So we just got everything cut and folded and put into place, trimmed off any of the excess. Do the same to the other side, and you can see that it doesn't actually cover the one side. So we just cut the edges off, glued everything into place. None of this has to be perfect, as long as it's fairly decent. I also use these racks on the bottom. So we're going to have a set hanging and a set sitting on the bottom. The reason for that is so that the tools can sit on top of the racks and still have some gap in between the bottom, so that the UV light and the ozone can reflect, hopefully, that's the theory, reflect up into the tools that are sitting on the bottom. The cabinet is now laying on its back. You can see I had to drill a couple of holes, and I also wanted the cabinet to move, because it's going to be heavy once it's full of tools. So I took a couple of 2x3s and just cut them to fit in the underside of this cabinet. And I'm just going to drive a couple of screws in there just to hold it in place. And then what we're going to do is put a set of wheels on it. These wheels are fantastic. They're from IKEA. We literally just keep these around the store because we put them on just about every cabinet we have. They have that bar, and the two wheels just sort of snap into the ends. And you can screw them to just about anything as long as it's within the size. So they hang off the sides a little bit. I'm not concerned about this. There's another shot of my big fat head that you don't need. Just me applying some adhesive. Yes, that's rubber cement. That's all I had at the time. And then I said I wasn't going to drive home and back and then, just for some spray adhesive, unless I absolutely had to. And there, I almost dropped the camera. So that's going to make you dizzy. Once I got it glued in, I realized that the standoffs, that's what hold the light. Didn't think about that at first. I had to cut a couple of holes in there because you cannot glue to this material. It does not work. So I cut a couple of holes, glued the little suction cups in place instead of hoping that they would stick. So we glued them into place and then tapped the light in there. Drilled a couple of holes in the back to make sure that you could put the wire through. The top light doesn't move. It wasn't as crucial, but the bottom one does because it's on the bottom of the top drawer. As you can see, we have to cut everything to fit for the reflective material and put the light in, cut the holes, glue those little suction cup standoffs to the bottom of the drawer again at the same time that we're gluing the reflective material to it. Again, this is me just making marks with the marker. That's what a marker's for, dumbass. Anyway, make the marks so you can cut out the holes because you're not going to be able to glue to the reflective material. Okay, so there's the cabinet. Both lights are mounted. Those are the timers. 3, 6, 9, I believe, is the hours that you can do them. It's fantastic. We just throw the tools in there and hit the button on the timer for 3 hours and walk away. You can see the UV light right there. You're not supposed to look at that, by the way, without protection. So I only just stuck the camera in there. This is with a bunch of tools, and you can see I can have the full set of racks on the top, or I can take some away. So I made it modular or customizable, but it works out great. Well, I guess that wraps up the video. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again next time.